And you may look at that and say, man, is that, you just put that on there just to show it? That's one of my favorite combinations, to be quite honest. That black, blue, a little bit of chartreuse, and a green pumpkin trailer. There's just something about that contrast. I've caught a ton of fish on a black and blue jig with a green pumpkin chunk on the back. So no, that's not just for show. Hey everybody, we're here in the garage, man, early in the month again, and getting to talk about picking 4 new baits for the month of November. And, you know, by the time it's got to this part of the year, you're either really thinking, man, these bass are doing some different stuff, or I'm not on the water because I'm in the woods chasing a deer. It's one or the other at this point in time during the year, and I've definitely learned to split that up a little bit myself as it comes to this time of the year. But you can definitely still have some excellent fishing because of that reason. A lot of people are, you know, they put up their fishing stuff, they put the boat up for the year, and they're in the woods chasing other critters. But you can definitely still have a lot of fun out there on the water this time of the year. And it has definitely changed, you know, by the time you get to November. The water temperatures are cooling off. Fish are, generally speaking, at least where I live, I feel like still getting more active. You know, even as that water temperature really falls pretty hard, you get down into that below 60, upper 50s, you know, you get down into that temperature range. That's probably my favorite time of the year, you know, to be out there, whether it's in the spring or in the fall. But when that water temperature is between 50 and 60 degrees, man, bass just do things that makes them really fun to catch, to be quite honest. So, and I don't have any deep water baits. That seems like a pretty common theme, honestly, with this pick 4, and I guess because you get outside of the summer months, and not that you can't catch fish deep in October, not that you can't catch them deep in November like we're talking about now. Certainly December, January, but for me, I like to fish shallow water. That's what I prefer to do. And it's just a more consistent bite. You know, I look at the way that I travel and fish across the country. It's a lot easier for me to go to a place I've never been or a place with a minimal amount of experience and be able to put together a pattern in shallow water easier and quicker than I can, you know, out in deep water. So November is definitely a time of the year, certain parts of the country. I mean, I think if I was in the Ozarks or somewhere like that, even some of our lakes here in East Tennessee at times, man, November, you need to be fishing deep. But almost on any of those bodies of water, you can still find some fish in shallow water and be able to catch them. So these are 4 baits that I definitely feel like you can catch fish on just about any body of water in the month of November. First one we're going to start with is carried over. Actually, a couple of these baits, this one and one other one, the same bait. One of them's a different color, but one of them, this one being exactly the same. That's that OG Rocco square wheel crankbait. That's in that bruised citrus shad color as well. This is a new color that we brought out in Rocco, and man, just a dynamite color. You've got those pearl white sides, a little bit of gold, but a little bit of chartreuse, and then kind of that black back. Real pale chartreuse belly, and what I would call kind of a peach throat on that Rocco, man. Just a dynamite color for water that's got some stain to it, or it's even really muddy water. That color just shows up so very well, and man, I've caught so many bass on that particular color over the years. That's one that I had custom painted for a long time before we decided to bring it out in that OG line. But yeah, bruised citrus, Rocco. If there was one color I was going to tell you to buy in Rocco, that would be the one. But cranking that dude around, you know, rocks, brush, any type of shallow cover or no cover at all, that guy right there is gonna be able to catch them when they're around that cover. Next up would be a spinnerbait. You know, I think we look at the fall of the year, fish chasing bait fish around. Rocco, obviously a bait fish color. Spinnerbait being a great bait fish imitator, you know, kind of looking like a little school of those bait fish. And this is a Terminator half ounce double willa. And I'll vary this, you know, all across the board from blade combinations, sizes, all the different options we've got there. But fall of the year, if I was going to tell you one to pick, you know, day in, day out, that's going to be a good one for about any situation, this would be it. Fall of the year, I'm thinking double willow leaf blades because I'm probably not going to be fishing extremely muddy water. It may have some color to it, and those double willows are going to have enough vibration, certainly, to be able for those bass to pick up on it. And then that color, that's called hot olive, just a fantastic shad imitating color. It's got a little bit of kind of dull chartreuse on the bottom, some blue glimmer on the sides, and a little bit of that olive where it gets its name from on the back of that. And then I always run a trailer on my spinnerbait. On this particular one, that's a Bass Pro Shops Cajun trailer. That's what I fish primarily on a double willow leaf spinnerbait, is that just little split tail style trailer. And then in this time of the year, I'm going to have a trailer hook on there. It's going to be a 1/0 VMC trailer hook. I'm going to have that on my spinnerbait all the time, especially if I'm actually in a competition. Always running a trailer hook on my spinnerbait. But that's just a great thing. You can throw that out, burn it across points. You can throw it around boat docks. You can throw it down rocky banks. It's going to work in a lot of different places in the fall. Next up, both these next two are actually dark colored stuff, what I would, refer to as crawfish imitating stuff. Because here's what's funny. First two baits, shad imitators, we talk about, the bass following the shad in the fall. You see them busting bait, see them feeding on bait fish so much. But they absolutely feed on crawfish a lot as well in the fall. I think there's something around the moons. I'm not going to try to act like I know exactly what's going on, whether a full moon it happens more or a new moon it happens more. But there are definitely hatches and times when crawfish are very, very active in the fall. And I think it's got something to do with, the moon actually being overhead or being up during daylight hours and stuff. But again, I have no idea exactly what causes it or when it happens or any of that kind of stuff. I just know that there's times in the fall when I catch a lot of bass on crawfish colored stuff, crawfish imitating stuff, even when I see them feeding on shad. So a funny story, Parker and I fished a tournament a couple years ago. Y'all may have seen the video of it. We were catching fish on this bladed jig, okay? That's black, blue, a little bit of green pumpkin, a crawl style trailer on the back of it, not even a bait fish style trailer on the back of it, 3/8 ounce. And now we were fishing water, honest to goodness, this deep, from anywhere from, less than knee deep to waist deep is about what we were fishing. And it was in a Black Friday tournament on Douglas. And those fish were in mud. There was a few pieces of wood here and there, and those were really good. But we had caught a few fish on a bladed jig already that morning. But we pull up to this little point, kind of at a little creek mouth deal, and there's fish literally feeding on the surface, chasing bait fish. We can see the bait fish jumping. They're that big. They're the size of a small crankbait, So we throw some small crankbaits in there. We don't catch anything. We throw a 3/8 ounce black and blue bladed jig with a crawfish imitating trailer in there and start catching them. And that was what worked. I mean, those fish were visibly feeding on shad, and we're throwing a bait that looks like a crawfish in there, and that's what we're able to catch them on. The whole match the hatch thing, it absolutely at times is the way to go. There's times when you need to go 180 degrees the other way. Those fish were feeding on bait fish, and those bait fish were acting in a way that we truly could not imitate them. There was nothing that I could do with a crankbait, with a white bladed jig, with any of those other stuff to really imitate those bait fish well. We needed to go completely to the other end of the spectrum, try to show them something that's not at all like what they're feeding on visibly, and yet we were still able to be productive with that. So just a little side tip on things that does happen sometimes when you're actually seeing stuff go on. Sometimes you need to go completely the other way from it. One last one. This is the same bait, truthfully, from last month's Pick 4, but just a different color and a different trailer. So last month I talked about using a 1/2 ounce Terminator Pros jig, but using a twin tail grub, that XPS twin tail grub on the back of it as a trailer. Once you get to where that water's cooled off more, in November a lot of times, I'm going to switch that back up to a chunk. That's a Bass Pro Elite chunk. That's what I'm going to go to more times than not once I get into November. I may still use that twin tail a little bit, but generally also a little bit darker colors. Either the Alabama crawl or this is the OD crawl. A little bit darker colors, especially if I'm fishing really dirty water. And, just trying to imitate crawfish more so. Texas crawl is a great color, September, October. But to me, once I get a little bit later in the year, water temperature gets a little cooler, I want to go with either those really natural green pumpkin, orange, browns, those type of shades, as well as the black and blue if I am fishing in, in a little bit dirtier, more kind of muddy water situation. So that OD crawl will get the nod then. But half ounce, elite chunk on the back of it. And you may look at that and say, man, is that, you just put that on there just to show? That's one of my favorite combinations, to be quite honest. That black, blue, a little bit of chartreuse, and a green pumpkin trailer. There's just something about that contrast of that. I've caught a ton of fish on a black and blue jig with a green pumpkin chunk on the back. So no, that's not just for show. That is exactly how I would fish that in a lot of situations. So yeah, November can be a great month, whether you're spending that in the woods or on the water. And these 4 baits right here are stuff that I'm going to have tied on all across the country. Get out there and try to do some work with.